Wagwan. In GTA 5, Michael has to work for the FIB agents Steve Haines and Dave Norton. The thing that can be surprising, and it certainly was for Michael, is why have Steve and Dave decided to involve Trevor in government shady business? We remember that at that time, Trevor's presence was not exactly a great deal for Michael, who had to keep the truth that he had betrayed him hidden from him, so he don't freak out and try to kill him. Today, we'll go through this subject, explaining why Trevor got involved, was it a good decision, and what could have potentially happened if he'd been left out. Let's begin with what we are even talking about and what I mean by shady government work, as well as why Michael had to work for Dave in the first place. So, before the event of the game, Michael had cut a deal with an FIB agent, Dave Norton, in which he would lead his crew to an ambush after one of the heists, and in exchange, the FIB would fake his death and finance his move to Los Santos, where he could live in abundance with his family, getting away from his crew and the life of a thief. 9 years later though, ish hit the fan again. After Michael pulled that big ass crib off a hill, he got indebted to Martin Madrazo for a lot of money. Therefore, in order to raise funds, he decided to come out of retirement and rob a local jewelry store. His irresponsibility resulted in his old friend from the crew, one of whom he had ambushed, Trevor, finding out about him being alive and eventually finding Michael in Los Santos. But there was another problem. Steve Haines, the boss of the agent with whom Mike had cut a deal, so Dave Norton, began to sniff around some of the older cases, including the deal with Michael. He found out about a whole fraud between Dave and Mike. He presumably stumbled upon it while investigating the jewelry store, and Dave portrays Michael's heist as the direct reason for Haines' undesired attention. And let's mark that Dave's deal with Michael was not an official regular deal. It was not fully legal and official, so if it ever got exposed, Dave and Michael would have faced serious legal problems.
What if I lose my job? Someone comes into my office, starts reading my files. They'll see the things I did. I know a lot of stuff. I can cop a plea, get 5 years, but you...
Fuck you ungrateful prick.
As it is GTA, it's needless to say that Michael did not go to prison, but rather had to work for Haines and help him in his shady government wars, in exchange for his past indiscretions never being exposed. The work eventually included a kidnapping of an IAA witness, intercepting an IAA money transport, an assassination of a potential terrorist, stealing a nerve gas from a high-security IAA facility, and an invasion of a FIB building in order to erase some undesired files. And almost all that Michael has done accompanied by his former running buddy, Trevor, whom the FIB bizarrely decided to involve as well. Okay, the first real question that has to be answered is what Trevor thought had happened back in North Yankton. See, Trevor obviously didn't know the full extent of Michael's deal. The initial plan was for Trevor to get shot, which would end him either in jail or in a coffin, whilst Michael would have got shot with a weak bullet, allowing him to pretend his death and run off. Eventually, of course, Trevor survived the ambush and Brad, another member of the crew that day, died instead. However, Trevor wasn't to know. Trevor thought that Brian landed himself in prison as Dave Norton was conducting a fake correspondence with him purporting to be Bradley from jail. As to what Michael did, Trevor thought that the heist simply went wrong as the police were pre-informed. Then Michael survived and went into witness protection. He was angry at him not for the fact that he had sold him out, because he didn't know that that was the case. He was angry at him for faking his death and never letting Trevor know about it. The whole thing looked to him as if Mike wanted to simply get away from him and Brad, which he had indeed wanted, and that was the grudge Trevor held against him. Since Michael had a family and told him that he just simply had thought that Trevor is dead, Trevor didn't make that big of a deal out of this. Sure, he was angry at him for it, but since they were back together now, it was cool. The main thing Trevor didn't like in Michael after they reunited was that he softened after the years and became fake, restrained, hypocritical, and miserable, at least in his eyes.
This rich fuck is useless.
Also, why did Trevor even return to look for Michael, and what did he want from him? Well, he may have not expected that Michael would go back to robbing places with him, but he more than certainly just simply wanted to reunite with him.
What is it? Money or a fight? What? What do you come here looking for?
I came looking for you. And I found you.
Yes, you did.
I know who you are, Michael Townley. You're in a new place, with some new friends and some fruity fucking habits, but you're still my running buddy. You can't undo that.
Michael was someone very important for Trevor from the beginning. He wouldn't be able to live knowing that Michael could be alive and just ignore that fact. He had to find out the truth. And after that, he wanted to ish on his doorstep. He wanted to be part of his life again. Although, as dumb as it may sound, Trevor also expected Michael to stop giving a damn that he got a family and do go back to being a thief. I mean, the second thing he did after going back to Los Santos was organizing a heist, in which he later involved Michael in. Of course, it didn't look that bad in the game cause Michael at that time had to run all those crazy errands for the FIB anyway, so that heist looked small compared to some of the other things Michael was forced to pull off in that time. So Trevor simply wanted to reunite with his old friend, or rather, he needed to. But okay, now why was Trevor a problem for Dave and Michael, and why the decision about involving him in the government work seems weird? Well, it was mainly that he will at some point figure out the real truth. And there were solid reasons to fear that, as the story that Michael fed Trevor with had a very serious flaw. Cause assuming Michael hadn't sold anyone out and only cut a deal after the left gone heist in North Yankton, so what Trevor thought, then what would be the reason the FIB would want to give him a deal? He was a notorious bank robber who hurt many people, ripped many people off, and had many counts of a whole set of various crimes to his name. And what? For that, he'd get free money till the end of his life from the agency, a big ass mansion in Rockford Hills, and a new name with a tabula rasa? No, he'd get life in a high security correctional facility at best. For the FIB to give him a plea deal, or that death faking deal, he'd have to snitch on a lot of people. Probably sell Trevor, Brad, Lester, and all the other motherfuckers he done worked with out. But as Trevor knew that Mike couldn't have sold him out, as he didn't face any heat from his robbing days throughout this whole time, and since he wasn't as angry at Michael, I don't think he thought that Michael sold anyone out. Therefore, it would take Trevor just a longer thought about it to probably see that something doesn't quite add up here. But as long as he and Michael was running together again, he didn't really have a reason to try to work things out like that. However, if he did figure it out, then Michael and Dave would be in trouble. Given how unpredictable and anger-driven Trevor was, revealing the truth could result in exactly what Michael described in By the Book.
If we didn't control the situation and he'd unearthed this connection, then what?
Then Trevor flips out, beheads me, kills my family, or raises them as his own. I don't know which is worse.
Dave was not really that endangered, but Trevor could have also just as well targeted him if he'd ever found out that he was the one who made Michael betray him and Brad. So both men, but especially Michael, had reasons to fear Trevor.
I ever tell you about Trevor? He's, hell walking on earth. That's what he is.
Well, let's bury this motherfucker.
Oh yeah, good luck with that.
Exactly though, why not bury the motherfucker? Well, firstly, Michael told Frank that it would have been too difficult as Trevor was a very dangerous man. However, I think it was also very much about the connection Michael and Trevor had. Sure, Michael had betrayed him before the years, and that made him feel very bad already. I simply don't think he wanted to kill Trevor. He didn't want to hurt him physically nor mentally. Even though sometimes he spoke as if he truly didn't want him in his life, but those were moments where rationalism was winning with emotion. But deep down, he did consider Trevor somewhat important to him and didn't want to hurt him. Besides, killing Trevor not only would have been extremely dangerous on its own, but Trevor also had some backup and people to avenge him after he'd have died. And Michael did not want to endanger his family in any more ways than he had to already, or at least so he claimed. But then, if not Michael, maybe the FIB could get Trevor dealt with. Well, the thing is, they had no interest in it. Of course, as we said, Dave was also sort of in the danger zone if Trevor ever figured things out, but well, that wasn't something that Mr. Haines would be concerned about, right? He didn't care about that, and he had a good workout in Trevor, so some perspective of Michael, his family, or Dave being in danger didn't bother him at all. However, Dave on its own, he didn't really see Trevor as an issue neither. The plan was after all for Trevor to never figure it out, and he relied on Michael from keeping the truth well hidden.
Yeah, well, according to my eyes, Trevor's your problem, Dave, as much as he is mine.
He's not a problem at all. We're monitoring him.
Therefore, there wasn't really anybody who'd be ready to kill Trevor, so he remained a time bomb. But then, if Steve's leverage was the main issue, couldn't they have him killed instead? Then, Michael wouldn't have had to work for the FIB, nor would Trevor have had to. Well, the short answer is no. Dave makes it very clear in By the Book mission.
So is he gonna be a problem?
For sure. But there's nothing we can do about it. If something happened to him right now, I'd be right under a microscope. An electron microscope of bureaucratic shit, and that would make it very difficult to keep old secrets.
If Steve died, that would have brought a lot of attention to his and Dave's files, making the uncovering of the deal with Michael Townley practically inevitable. And let's note that killing Sweet in the final mission was possible because Michael had at this point deleted his file from the FIB servers during the Bureau raid, so he was all clean. Well, almost innit. Okay then, with all that being said, now we get to the real question. So why was Trevor eventually involved in Michael's work for the FIB? Well, as we said, Trevor wasn't a problem in Steve Haines' eyes, nor even in Dave's. Steve didn't care if Michael got killed by Trevor, nor if Dave got. And the work he wanted Michael to pull off was nothing minor, so every pair of competent hands was appreciated. And since Trevor was a part of Mike's crew, he got him involved as well. You know, they had leverage on Michael, so they tried to make the most of it by also involving people who was Michael's friends, who would help Michael get out of the mud, like Trevor or Franklin. And Trevor was definitely capable of taking care of dirty work of that caliber, since he was an experienced bank robber after all. And then Michael was angry at Dave in the game for involving Trevor, as Michael seemed not to have wanted Trevor to know about his affiliation with the FIB at all.
Now, Trevor Phillips.
Oh, you're crazy. I ain't calling him.
I thought you might say that, so we had him picked up.
That's a dumb move, Dave. Real fucking dumb. Great! And you brought Trevor in. We're telling him I'm all cozy with the FIB.
You'll need discreet support. We'll maintain control of the situation.
Discreet? Control? Yeah, good luck controlling discreet Trevor. Yeah, I wonder how controllable and discreet he'll be when he sees the guy who killed me and put Brad in jail.
That is weird, as one of the first things he told Trevor after he'd found him was that he was in witness protection.
It was a long time ago, man. I've been in witness protection, I still am.
As much as it was a lie, or rather half a lie, because he was in a sort of a witness protection, only not an official one. Anyway, this shows that Michael had no problem with Trevor knowing about his partnership with the FIB in one way or another. Trevor knew about Michael being buddies with the FIB anyway, so hiding from him that now Michael has to work for them if that unofficial witness protection program of his was to be kept discreet would be very risky. First of all, it'd be difficult to hide it in the first place, cause Trevor was scanning Michael and wanted to be a part of his life. So sooner or later, he would find out, and Michael was quite naive to believe that he could keep Trevor at the gate. And if Trevor found out at some point that Michael was on top of everything, now secretly working for the FIB, you can imagine that it wouldn't work in favor of his trust towards Mike. He'd get angry again, and that was dangerous. As it happened in the actual story was safer. Michael portrayed his work with the FIB to Trevor as something completely usual, or rather something that was nothing that he'd be scared of Trevor finding out about. See what I'm saying? It's like if you portray a bad thing as something obviously normal and natural, there's a big chance that others will assume it is normal too. And that was the strategy here. It gave Trevor the feeling that he found out the big truth already and that now Michael couldn't hide anything from him. And besides, Trevor didn't really mind working for the feds anyway. Not only did he believe that they'd release Brad from jail afterhand.
Alright, and we do this, and they help us spring Brad.
But it was also great amusement for him.
What about your ties to me? To Brad? Those ties are why you got roped in on this FIB instigated suicide pact. For as long as it keeps me amused, I am. I ain't exactly sure it's gonna be amusing. We'll see. You know, you had me at suicide pact.
You know, he was the kind of guy who liked killing people, shooting shit and blowing up helicopters or robbing the government. And it also probably put him at ease to see that the government is so fake and corrupt from head to toe, so he can appreciate how real he is himself, in contrast to the almighty American government. And also, like we said, he valued Michael a lot, or rather, he needed him in his life, whether he liked him or not. They had a special connection which was especially strong on Trevor's side. He would follow Michael into the fire, and therefore it was his friend's duty to help Michael with his problems. So now let's settle on a final verdict. Was it a good decision after all to have Trevor involved? Well, yes and no. From many perspectives, it was a good thing. It was less risky for Michael's secrets to be figured out by Trevor, and Trevor massively helped the FIB in the work they needed done. Without Trevor, Michael, Franklin and Lester would have had a far harder job taking care of all those fuckeries that the feds wanted them to carry out. But in the end, Trevor became a problem for Steve Haines. Mainly the ease with which he gained himself powerful enemies like the Chinese or the Merryweather. Apart from rejection, Trevor weren't scared of nothing and no one. So he didn't have an issue with mashing up the deal of those Chinese with the O'Neill brothers or robbing the Merryweather on multiple occasions. Those enemies soon also became a problem for Dave and Steve. They were drawing attention to Dave, which was obviously a problem.
I'm out, Davey. From now on, done.
I appreciate that. I'm trying my best for you, but you and Trevor attacking Merryweather? Repeatedly? It doesn't help.
That's Trevor's thing.
Whoever's thing it is, it's unauthorized and it's dumb. They've been sniffing around my office. We really need to talk.
Additionally, Steve eventually also faced legal trouble, mainly for the deputation of the raid on the FIB building. Eventually, he was scared that Michael and his crew were going to testify against him in court, and that's why he wanted to arrest Michael in the wrap-up mission.
Because you don't want me to testify in court about our various business dealings, right?
They know or think they know that I'm the one that was behind the incident.
Ultimately, most blame was to be put on Agent Sanchez, so Haines' sidekick and the guy who apparently snitched on him in the first place.
So what are you gonna do for me about Haines, the rest of the FIB, the IAA, and everyone else, huh?
History's written by the living, okay? We can pin most of it on Agent Sanchez.
But Steve was still under the radar and was facing a process assumingly. And so he needed Michael and his crew to keep their mouths shut. He eventually trusted Michael and Franklin to be quiet, but he was nowhere near sure of Trevor. That's why he wanted him killed at the end of the game. In terms of Michael, I think that despite Trevor ultimately connecting the dots, involving him in the FIB dirty work actually helped. See, I think that Trevor may have quietly suspected the real truth, as he said in Bury the Hatchet. He'd been thinking about what he eventually called out to Michael in the same mission.
There's always something wrong with that job. What went down after, I guess. I guess I wanted to believe fucking police circus! Idiot!
But he didn't speak nor wanted to believe it, as he was very happy that him and Michael had reunited and now were taking scores again. The trigger that made him angry again is that Michael didn't want that. Michael wanted to take care of the family and make films, and didn't necessarily want Trevor in his life anymore. Trevor, yet again being rejected by someone he loved, got frustrated and angry again, and that's why he decided to go and check if his suspicions were correct. Him figuring out the truth was inevitable, and him being in on the FIB partnership made it actually longer before he figured everything out. So yeah, it was good and bad. It brought many benefits, but at the end turned out to be problematic as well, especially for the feds. So what if Trevor wasn't ever involved? Well, mostly what we said. Michael would have probably wanted him not to even know that he was working with the feds. So he would have at some point realized it himself, get angry at Michael from keeping the truth from him again, and that could have led to him quickly figuring out the full extent of Michael's betrayal of him. So Bury the Hatchet could have happened a little earlier. Additionally, the work Michael and his crew was to pull off would have become harder because of the lack of Trevor's help and skills. Although it would have probably turned out a bit better for the FIB, because Steve wouldn't have had to worry about Trevor going crazy and going against him in court, nor worry about his enemies lurking around his office. Well, and eventually he wouldn't have lost his life, as he'd have never tasked Franklin with killing Trevor, going with the canon ending of course, so the ending C. So yeah, I think that the subject has been exhausted. Let me know if there's anything else that should have been mentioned and if you agree with what was said. Thank you for watching till the end. Respect.